not an ideal window to work on, but I'm hoping I can cover 2 points that is kind of important that people struggling on. So first of all, let's talk about the pole work. Two main problems when it comes to closing out, when you can't fully close out properly, or you can't finish the squeegee, landing the squeegee right. The main cause is you're not in the right angle, and most window cleaners don't use an angle arm. And the other problem is if you're working on windows that have a sticky rubber seal. I'll talk about how best I can close out on these windows. That also causes problems on closing out. So first of all, I want to talk about window cleaning a top window here. Right, so I can navigate very nicely. I'm in 10 degree on the squeegee. That all works very nice, right? I'm in a straight pole. But the problem is when it comes to closing out, I'm not really, even when I lift my pole up, I've got a closeout mark that is not fully, it's not a fully finished window. Closing out is the hardest thing to do when you're on a pole, right? So that is not the right angle. It was okay to navigate up until closing out, but if I'm working on a window here, which is lower down, it will work fine up until a certain point, and then it will start again becoming problematic. So if I'm using a straight pole, which most people use, which I recommend, don't do what everybody else does. The only option is you can change your angle with your angle choice. I'm now in a 25. Now I can close out, but there's a better scenario closing out there, right? I can have my squeegee flat and then use this as an optional additional angle to close out on. So right now I'm working like this, and I've got this little action here to close out on, but now I've got this action here. So this now represents my elbow, and my shoulder is the lifting up and down action with my hand, right? So now I can close out. I can still navigate just as good as I was navigating with the flat pole, with the flat 10 degree, but I can now have a nicer, more lovelier closeout than I would do in a 25. But that's just this scenario on this window, and the problem is I could take you through 100 different windows, complicated, problematic closeout windows, and it still won't be enough for window cleaners to say I really understand how this works now. What will help, yeah, is you just listening and me saying what you should do. What you should do is get an angle arm. There's many different types of angle arms to use from. I'm using the doctoral angle arm right now. There will be a new doctoral angle arm coming out shortly, more strengthened. So for all those window cleaners that break their doctoral angle arms, you've got one now that you probably will struggle to break, but worry about that when that comes out. So having this extra angle arm makes your work more complicated. So you're going to have to do some more learning, some more practicing, plenty more practicing, and trial and error until things start to fit. So you've got to find that glove that fits. And me making video after video doesn't get that glove to fit the viewer. What happens is the viewer gets the information, I need to get that size glove to fit my hand. So you watch the video that I make, and you go out, you get the glove to fit your hand, and then you've got to practice putting that glove on, and eventually things will work very nice for you. But it takes time and practice, and you've got to keep practicing until things work out. So we've got now a lower window, and this is now in a what is it, in 10 degree again? It's in 10 degree again, but I've got this flat pole, this straight pole, which I advise you don't need. You need something a bit better. This pole will work up until about here, and then I'll start getting problems with, I mean, it's not too much of a problem, but it's a little bit getting just past the threshold of it performing up until about here, right? And then it starts to misbehave, start getting lines, turn marks and smudges and smears. So the angle needs changing. You can change the angle here, but what happens is if you change the angle back here, it makes things work even easier for you. So I've now made my pole past parallel, right? So now I can very easily cope going down here, taking out those edges. Now I've got to land my squeegee. Now on this window, because it's got no awful sticky rubber seals, I can close my squeegee out at a right vertical angle like this and close out with no problem. But the second problem with closing out issues is some of these windows have sticky rubber seals. So that's going to affect how you close out, because it's smudging and smearing, it won't close out, won't buff up nicely, it's lots of friction and it's not nice at all. It could be on this window, or any of these windows, and if it's high up, push further back into the roof, horrible angle to work at, and then you've got these awful frames to close out on with the rubber seals, makes things very difficult. So another solution to get past this awful closing out scenario, you've got this much space to close out. You don't close out here, you don't close out here, you've got to land your squeegee. It's like a plane, you've got to land your plane, your squeegee safely, right? So when we've got these very sticky, problematic frames, seals, right? What we need to do is not close out like this. We've got to get this squeegee really flat to close out on. So we're not closing out like this, we're closing out like this, and that will help on these very sticky, unbelievably difficult frames to close out on. So all this stuff that I'm talking about is complicated stuff, and it's too complicated for the average window cleaner. And what I've been saying for years, don't be like the average window cleaner, be the best window cleaner you can be. Now, can you be the best window cleaner you can be if you use a wagtail or a Sorbo or an Unger squeegee or an Etere squeegee? No, you'll be like everyone else. There's slight tweaks, slight advantages with wagtails on a pole compared to a Sorbo or an Unger, but they're just slight tweaks. Think of these brands as they're making you lousy. So it's easy to be a lousy window cleaner because everybody is a lousy window cleaner. In this country, in that country over there, everywhere you see, just watch them work longer, harder, slower, get less results. Watch them work with their one hand, watch them work with their one size squeegee fits all for the most part. That is the typical lousy window cleaner. You don't want to be like that. These tools help you become a more productive, more skillful, talented window cleaner. And these things that I'm talking about here, they're difficult things to grasp and to learn. Like an extra angle arm in your pole. Utilize it all the time and it will become easy. The more you do, the more it will become like second nature.